This is a panel that's technically about investing in the future. Diversification through partnerships is the title of this talk. I want to introduce our two panelists. Of course, Eric Cantor needs no introduction, the Vice Chairman and Managing Director at Moelis, and of course I know you from DC days, as well as Majid Mufti. He's the CEO of NEOM Investment Fund. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. So I just want to take a moment to talk about where we are in the world. From an investor perspective, what is the incentive to be putting your cash right now in the Middle East?
Well, first of all, I want to say we're here at the NEOM house, and it is a bright spot for Davos. I don't detect any pessimism here in the NEOM house, and I think you have that for a reason. Because as the Saudi government stood up NEOM and the investment fund and all that it's about, it really is that penultimate sort of coming together of Vision 2030 for the kingdom. As an individual who now is on Wall Street, talking with many investors, I don't think a day goes by that I don't have a conversation with a client that doesn't include discussion about what's going on in the region. Obviously Saudi is the biggest market there, and I think investors want to believe there will be success. And if you just look around, you feel the pulse in NEOM House, it does reflect, I think, a real optimism. Investors obviously are looking for return. They're looking for ease of doing business. They're looking for partnership. And I think ultimately global investors want to invest, want to see the Middle East and GCC, Saudi itself, become an even bigger part of the global economy. Again, you look at what's going on in the innovation coming out of NEOM. I mean, there's no better, more competitive profile for an investor.
Majid, talk to us a bit about how you see 2024 for NEOM, because I think there was a fabulous graphic from the Times the other day talking about His Royal Highness Mohammed bin Salman and putting that $64 billion to work across various sectors, various cities and projects in Saudi Arabia. And one of them, of course, is NEOM. Talk to us about how you see the returns on that investment.
I think 2024 is a inflection point. So for someone who's actually been part of the NEOM and the giga projects that are taking place in Saudi, we've spent a lot of time on strategy development. We spent a lot of time on master development. We spent a lot of time thinking about the business and revenue models. Today, we are moving into execution. We know exactly what needs to be built. We know exactly how it needs to go. And we're now moving into inviting real partnerships that are willing to come in for the long haul and come into this very ambitious future vision.
It's fascinating to look at just even the very location of NEOM, because you're sitting there right on the Red Sea. It's a strategic location. And those of us who cover and understand the region understand that Saudi Arabia is the region's largest economy. And what's good for Saudi Arabia is good for the rest of the region. It trickles down to every single country. To your mind, how important is it that Western companies put their money in Saudi Arabia?
Like Majid said, the best is to go, right? But I think that most investors, they want to stick their toe in the water before they really commit. And I know that the government is trying to sort of align its policies, its investment incentives, its taxation, its regulatory construct to make things a real success.
Talk to me a little bit, Majid, about the regulations and the incentives for investors to get involved in NEOM. Because obviously, if you're looking at the Middle East, you've got all of these different avenues in which to put your money, whether it's Dubai or Abu Dhabi or Doha. Saudi Arabia obviously is the newest to the scene in terms of international investment, but frankly, that gives you a lot of leeway in terms of how you build it out.
With every ambitious program, and one that is NEOM, it requires things that would be enablers to help turbocharge ourselves in that development forward. Part of which is regulatory reform, is the regulations, and the impetus that business environments and people in the business sector require. And we are now working on putting all that together for interoperability. Now, once that's announced, we will have regulations in each and every sector that will be more interesting for people to come and work in NEOM and develop, and especially on the technology side, because that's going to be pretty attractive and ease of doing business.
Yeah. What is the investor base today? Where are they coming from? Are they Western companies? Are they Eastern? I mean, who are you getting in bed with, actually?
Today, and I'll be honest, I'm seeing a huge appetite coming in from the East.
We're talking China.
We're talking China, we're talking Korea, we're talking East. They're willing to come and do work today. In the West, there is a real intrigue. And they're starting to come in, especially the larger companies, and we're starting to see the second wave of companies now also starting to come in. We have a number of projects that are going to be announced soon, really large ones that we're very proud of, some that we've worked on with Eric and his team on. So, stay tuned.
What do you see as the greatest challenge to attracting a Western investor? I mean, when you're sitting there having those conversations, what's holding them back?
I think in the early days, and rightly so, NEOM is a greenfield. And so what they want to see is basic infrastructure, some vertical development, some inertia, and once that starts, it's going to be a flywheel effect.
Yeah.
And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in terms of what it was really meant to do. And so we're seeing a little bit of that uptick coming in from the West, but we're seeing a real appetite from the East, and we're just hoping that people and businesses in the West don't miss out.
Hadley, I'll just follow up on Majid's comments about that. We've had a lot of transactions we could point to of Western investors looking to the region, and they have invested, transacted, and as I think Majid suggested, this is a bet on the future, right? And the challenge right now is to demonstrate that there is investment on the part of the kingdom in this investment for the future. But the Western investors have no problem investing into the ongoing current sort of investment opportunities. So it's a win-win. I mean, you can leverage on already some of the largest investors in the world have already put their stake in the ground after decades and decades in the region and in the kingdom. And so I think that's sort of the low-hanging fruit and the partnerships that can come from some of those that already have comfort with working in the region and with the kingdom.
Yeah. How do you see the global environment today and NEOM's role in that?
I think the global environment has its ebbs and flows like every time, different stories. I think Eric has a better insight on this than we do. But what we're seeing in terms of the level of interest hasn't wavered at all. In fact, there's only one way up for the level of interest that's coming to NEOM. We continue to have people that we host and bring in, ushering them into the right opportunities. I mean, the way we're positioning ourselves is to become that living lab where we are taking on some of the toughest challenges that need to be cracked. That means, how do we scale technologies that we need for greener energy, for treating water, for desalination, in a way that is actually sustainable? To do that, there's going to be a heavy level of investment that's required. But we are agnostic in terms of who wants to come and work with us. So we do want to be the Switzerland of technology innovation, where we'd love for everybody to become a partner with us.
Can you be agnostic?
I think we're trying to be. You're absolutely right. And we're starting to see the remnants of, you guys need to decide whether you want Western technology or Eastern technology. We're starting to see some of that, especially with the AI discussions.
Yeah.
And we're not too fond of those discussions. I'll be honest with you, what we care about is advancement.
Yes.
And to the ability that we're able to invite the right people to come in and work with us, with the long-term view, with humanity as a whole, as a beneficiary to it, then that's who we really want to work with.
Yeah. When you hear words like that, does that give you comfort?
Well, I think from an investor standpoint, it has been an amazing journey for me post almost 25 years in elected office in the U.S. To see the confidence on the part of an investor, because capital will flow to its most efficient use. And the kinds of things that are going on, not only in the investment fund at NEOM, but just the place in and of itself, is very attractive to these budding technologies, these very cutting edge pieces of sectors, to, as Majid said, it's a laboratory for the future. And so I do have confidence that even with all these headwinds, that there will be and continue to be a build and interest to invest in something like NEOM.
Yeah. What is something you think, we know misperception and misconception, but what is something about NEOM that we just don't know as potential investors?
I think the scale of the project really scares people. I think because there's so many different enclaves that are being master developed also confuses people as to what NEOM is. So I think it's more of an awareness that is required. So again, back to what Eric started off with. It's not that there's something wrong with it. It's more as once people get to know somebody else, once people start to get their heads around who this person is, what this business is, what this country is, that anxiety is wasted. People are willing to now, oh, I get it. So that's what this is. What's the first piece of business that's coming in? How do we participate in that? And then you break it up into smaller pieces. And our job is to really try to do that, is to create the awareness, the understanding, is to ring fence certain projects for investors to come into that they can get their heads around.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the normal evolution
Yeah.
that requires to take place.
And it's beyond AI, it's beyond logistics, it's robotics,
it's biotech, it's esports and gaming, it's fashion technology down to that. It's food and the way we think of how we, agriculture. It's industrial. So it is, His Royal Highness and the NEOM vision has not left anything unturned. They want to do everything, and they want to have a little piece for everybody to come and participate in. So there's going to be something for everyone to come into.
And so what we've really seen in the last few years is Saudi Arabia as a geopolitical heavyweight kind of coming into its own, but also in terms of becoming a brick, changing the conversation.
As a Saudi, I'm very proud of where we are today. We've done, a lot in terms of trying to play that role for the Middle East, play that role for the Islamic nations, play that role for other countries in the G20, in terms of up-and-coming countries in the BRICS, to say, how best can we be a better version of ourselves, and how do we play in the global theater?
Yes.
And I think so far it's been great, and I think NEOM is one of those projects that is an allure for many people to want to participate in.
Because unlike a few years ago when everyone would come to the region, and particularly to Riyadh with their hands out, now you're looking at a situation where you're talking to an economic and geopolitical heavyweight in a way that we didn't see Saudi Arabia just a few years ago.
In climate change, in AI, and in projects. So now we are actually, rather than sending money out, we're actually starting to see FDI and investors come in. Real intrigue of investors. There's potential, huge upside potential. We're looking for stability, obviously, as we started the discussion. But with stability, there's only one way to go.
It's interesting the role that the kingdom and GCC in general, but the kingdom being the largest, is playing internationally, because those of us who believe in global trade, believe in the interconnectedness of the world, sometimes in our country are less and less in the forefront, because there is so much populism and nationalism coming forward. In the EU likes to say that they are worried about the trade posture of the U.S. and what happens to the transatlantic alliance, although the EU's got a long way to go to correct some of its very protectionist measures in its industries. But suffice it to say, I'm a believer in trade relationships. Meanwhile, somebody like Saudi Arabia arises and says, we've got heft, we want to play, we're going to go and make sure that the barriers are reduced, if not eliminated. There's a whole lot of nations and countries that feel the same way. You think about a place like Singapore, their whole existence is on trade. And so while you've got the great powers competition with China and in the U.S., becoming much more inward-looking, it is a great opportunity for what's, the role that can be played by a country like Saudi.
Yeah.
No doubt. And finally, just to wrap it up, in your mind, is that an opportunity for an incubator like NEOM to really take on that mantle of not just in the region, being a regional leader in AI, in innovation, but also globally?
NEOM's objective is to become a incubator, a living lab. The appetite for trialing things out, and so what we do at the NEOM Investment Fund is we support each and every sector in terms of meeting their strategic objective, their investments, And what I'm seeing is the appetite for technology is huge. The appetite for taking a little bit of risk, for scaling, is large. So there's money coming into the investor, into the Topco side. There's money that's going to be used in terms of trialing and scaling some of these opportunities and projects. And so just by the sheer amount of desire to really take a bet on some of the future technologies, I think that's going to gravitate a lot of people to come and want to co-create and co-collaborate in that environment. So by virtue of that, you almost do become an incubator of sorts.
Yeah. Gentlemen, we're going to have to leave it there. We're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Good. Very good.